30 seconds. Okay, it is now 5:30, and I will call to order the May 20th, 2025 City Council meeting for Hutchinson. Please call roll.
Richardson.
Here.
Garza.
Here.
Bass.
Here.
Nagers.
Here.
Goff.
Here.
Pledge of allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Dylan Christner, the group's pastor from Cross Point Hutchinson, to lead us in prayer this evening.
Will you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father and God of our Lord Jesus Christ, may you be honored in these proceedings today. Give wisdom, humility, and compassion to those of our local government as they serve all people in our community. Bless our city, and may your name be glorified in it. Amen.
Thank you.
Item number 4, proclamations, National Public Works Week.
If you could join me at the podium. Make sure you're all right here, so you're on the Whereas Public Works and Utilities professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Hutchinson, Kansas. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works and Utilities professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Hutchinson to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Stacey Goss, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week, and I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works and utilities professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Oh, 911 before you did.
Council Mayor, thank you. All these guys behind you are just a small portion of our crew, and every day they're out doing all they can, 24/7. Sometimes in the rain, snow, holidays, doesn't matter. So we appreciate it, and all the citizens. So thank you.
That's on purpose.
Thanks, guys. Next item, please.
Item number 5, petitions, remonstrances, and oral communications from the audience.
This part is for oral communications from the audience. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes and to items not on the agenda. Audience members may address items on the agenda when the item is discussed by City Council. Is there anybody here to speak in public comment?
Hello, Council and Mayor. Dave Sotelo, Director of Strategic Growth. I just wanted to provide a quick update on our Memorial Hall community engagement process, and then Jessica Woodyard, our public communications manager, will just give you more insight into the actual findings. But on May 8th, we hosted a community engagement meeting on the future of Memorial Hall. We had more than 200 residents participate, a strong turnout that reflects just how much people care about this building and its future. From the start, our goal was to create a process where everyone had a fair opportunity to engage, not just the most vocal or most comfortable in front of the microphone. I always use the scenario. Some of us are very comfortable at the microphone, and someone like, I don't know, I'll give you a scenario. Someone named Paul Brown might not be so comfortable in front of the microphone, might not be interested in engaging with people. And so just giving different formats to people is always helpful. We believe public input should reflect the full range of our community, including those who think before they speak, or some of those who need time to process or simply don't want to stand at a podium. Me, I love a podium, I love a mic, I think I do pretty well, but someone might not be as comfortable with that. So we use an interactive come-and-go format based on the IAP2 model, which guides professional public participation practices. This format allowed every resident to learn about the building, reflect on the options, and share comments at their own pace through writing, voting, and idea sharing. The result, hundreds of comments were submitted and published in full within days. There was some summaries, but we also published the direct feedback that we received. Every comment we included on that report. This wasn't about speeding things up or avoiding tough conversation. It was about making space for more voices. If we had used a public comment format, even 5 minutes per speaker, that would have meant 17 hours of mic time. That's simply not feasible. I mean, we want to have it in the afternoon so that people can come to it. 17 hours, that means, I don't know what time we're getting home after that, or just several meetings of that. And to us, this is just a more efficient way of getting the same feedback that people had. There was plenty of people who gave us their written speeches, and we made those part of the report as well. What we're building here is a culture of engagement, one that values participation, transparency, and accessibility. We're not just asking for input. We're trying to help make sense of that input and then being more transparent of what that input is. It doesn't mean that we're always going to have sticky notes and sticky dots, though I love that format. It just means that we are going to try to find the best format that might make sense for the meeting that we have. You have participated in our public meetings before. We've been training for moments like Memorial Hall. We had 2 community meetings last year where we had a really good turnout, and we learned a lot about that process. One of the things that we learn that I hear all the time is, if you're going to ask for feedback, you better present that feedback out to the public. So we had heard that feedback constantly, and so our top priority after that meeting was to have the actual report published on our website and available for the public to receive. We also had every participant that was interested in giving us their email, give us their email as they were coming in so that we can directly send the report to their inboxes once the process was completed. We're proud of that process and grateful for everyone who took part. And as always, if you have feedback, don't come to me, go to Jessica. No, I'm kidding. You can come to me and I'll listen to that feedback. Jessica and I will try to work so that we can just make our public engagement meetings better. That's what we're after, just making constant improvements. And it's also a team effort. Strategic growth spends a lot of time thinking about this. Jessica certainly spends most of the time on this. It's from Jessica. And then we also, our constant conversations with the city manager, with our community development director, and then whoever is the project is related to. So in this case, Justin Combs, director of parks. So I'll turn it to Jessica now, who will give you a little bit more insight of what we found through that process. But I'm happy to answer any questions after she's done.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Jessica Woodyard, Public Communications Manager, City of Hutchinson. So Dave did a great job giving the summary of the format of the meeting and how everything was decided on how the evening would go. I just have a couple of the feedback. Like Dave said, all of the information has been published. That's on our website. You can find that under community engagement. Also, the about 156 people who gave us their email addresses that evening, we sent the full report, the full 30 pages, directly out to them. So to give you some of the highlights tonight, we asked what values should guide this decision. So they were given 2 sticky dots, and they could choose 2 of the values based off of historic preservation, community use, sustainability, cost, and accessibility. And with 223 votes, the top was historic preservation, and with 220, the next was community use. Under which path should we take, 104 responses supported preserving and updating Memorial Hall. The common themes that we saw were the acoustics in the building, the sentimental value, and the need for a large community venue. Residents also advocated for basic upgrades like the HVAC, lighting, and accessibility, not the luxury improvements. The key takeaways from the meeting: it was very clear from the public that they value the preservation of Memorial Hall. The community wants it to stay in the public hands and remain a civic venue and be upgraded smartly, not replaced or sold. All of the raw feedback has been included in the report to help guide council's discussion and our next steps. So if there aren't any further questions, Dave and I can stand for those.
I have a comment. First of all, I want to tell you guys that the turnaround time on this was phenomenal. I believe you had it up within 2-3 business days. And so that's really great. And I think the transparency throughout all of this is commendable. The fact that you took every single comment, even the ones that were questionable or incoherent, and we still put them on there, which just gives every single comment the same value and gives everybody's voice the same volume. So I've read the report. I've read through all of the comments. Had some good laughs with them as well. But really, I think the council is taking all of it in still. But you guys did great work on this.
Thank you. I think all of the comments in there show that, like Dave mentioned, that if we would have given everyone mic time, that we wouldn't have been able to hear everyone's comments. And this way, it is written out for you for everyone to see the comments and everyone's voice. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who is here to speak in public comment?
Excuse me. Hi. My name is Garrett Zimmerman. You guys might have some pamphlets there in front of you that I think Jesse handed out beforehand. And this actually goes right along with what was just being discussed, and it, in my opinion, goes right, in line with it. I'm pretty off the cuff when it comes to this, so I'm just going to kind of shoot from the hip on it. I was at that event last week. That was phenomenal, and I love what you guys got from it. And you're right. It's a fantastic way for everybody to get an opportunity to share their voice. It sounds like people are pretty in support of the Memorial Hall staying around and staying in the city's hands, and also improving it. What I've kind of placed on your tables there, a little bit of background about myself and what I and my other partner, Robert Thomas, does. We've been promoters for over the last 15, 20 years, 35 years between the two of us, specifically in concert venues, theaters, typically dated ones, ranging from 1,000 to 2,500 and up to 5,000 cap. We've had great success over time. We've learned a lot. We just both recently departed from an organization called Temple Live. You may or may not be familiar with it. It's got a location in Wichita, Kansas, another one in Fort Smith, Arkansas, Cleveland, Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, and as well as Peoria, Illinois. All of them pretty dated facilities in various states of repair, and in some of them worse condition than Memorial Hall. In our experience, there's a great opportunity here that you guys have to really be able to not only preserve as an asset that you have, but also to give back to the community, and also maybe even put some back into the budget. You look through there and you'll see some conservative, moderate, and progressive estimates on what we've done. I want you to know that all this information was created based on previous P&Ls from businesses that we've ran and operated in the past. We're not the best at this by any means, but from a cost-effective standpoint, we're not many folks necessarily are probably itching to get into Hutchinson, Kansas. But we love Wichita. We love Kansas. We love this area. We think it's got a ton of potential. You see things like Stifle Theater. You see the shows and concerts that go through there. There's no reason that concerts like that shouldn't be coming through here. And there's plenty of concerts to go around. There's no shortage of artists that are trying to make their way from New York to L.A., and they have to make their way through the Midwest. And that's the great thing about the location of where we're at here. So, I just wanted to put this proposal together, kind of give you guys an idea of realistically what you could be looking at. I just think that it also gives you guys a path forward for all these renovations and improvements that want to be made. Air conditioning, I think, being the number one item on everybody's list, because then it would then turn the venue into a 365-day-a-year establishment that could be used both in the summertime and the wintertime. I do want to just make a few quick notes here, and they're also listed in the notes on the sheet you've got. But this isn't about pushing out any of the existing events that you guys already have. I know you guys have an extremely modest rental price, and that's a great asset to the community. And I've heard about dance competitions and things like that. And we're not here to push any of that out or make it go away or make it pay a whole bunch more money. We're happy to continue to work with those kinds of organizations, keep the price where it's at so those things can keep happening here. But then alongside that, infuse our experience in doing concerts. And you'll see a list there on Robert and I's resumes of artists that we've worked with in the past. It's kind of all I've got for you. Do you guys have any questions for me or anything you guys want to ask while I'm up here?
You did a good job of winging it.
Thank you.
Garrett, would it be okay with you if I have these, the entirety of the packet that you handed out entered into our minutes for record, even though
Certainly.
it has your contact information on it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you want that retracted?
No, you can keep
Okay.
it in there.
Okay.
It's completely fine.
Well, thank you for coming and putting together the information. If anything, I feel like you're treating this like a job interview, which I appreciate because right now we have an RFP out on the website that essentially is a job interview for people with a development idea, and this is a wholly different idea. So I think it's important that we consider all options. So I appreciate your creativity here and also your willingness to come to Hutch the number of times that you have already to meet with us, to meet with Jesse, and to be here this evening.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and I know you guys have that RFP out right now, and this is a different approach, and I'm not quite entirely certain. Yeah, I'm not a real estate developer. We just have a skill set, and it's a shame when you see a cool old building like that, and it gets underutilized, because I know that there's a lot of improvements that you guys want to make to it, but without a doubt, it's as it stands right now, it's actually in pretty great shape. You should see some of the music venues that these artists tour throughout the country. You guys actually have a really beautiful facility, and it won't take much to just turn it on and rock and roll. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And I had told John when we were talking about the RFP, nobody is knocking on Hutch's door saying, I want this building, I want to do something here. But then as we've begun the conversation, here you are knocking on our door telling us, I want to do something here. Here's my plan. So I really like this. This is exciting. And I hope that the community sees this as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Garrett.
Is there anyone else present to speak in public comment this evening? Seeing none, please call the next item.
Item number 6, consent agenda.
Any questions or remarks from council regarding the consent agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you here to speak in public comment?
Could I come up?
Yes, that I would be fine with that. Please. I'm sorry. I did not mean to skip past you. If you could say your name, please.
Okay, my name is Hutch Mosier, and I'm a retired sign painter. Yeah, we moved here to Hutchinson in 1970, and I accidentally made a discovery about Hutchinson Saturday. I was alone in a laundromat, and the maintenance guy was working on the washing machines, and we started chatting, and finally said, "You wouldn't believe what my water filters pull out of the water that come into here." I said, "Probably not." And he grabbed a bucket and pulled it over and showed it to me, and there was probably 2 inches or so of something that looked like sand, but it was a lot finer than sand, And he stuck his finger in it, and it acted just like sand, it left an imprint in it. Well, it didn't look very friendly. So when I went home, I boiled a pot of water, and after it cooled, I poured it through a coffee filter. When the pot dried out, it left a residue in it, And the coffee filter didn't show, here's the coffee filters the coffee filters didn't show anything, but they were rigid, so I knew something was in them. So I asked myself, what could possibly be in our water that's suspended while the water is in motion, but settles and condenses when the water is still, and we can't see it. It's invisible. What could that possibly be? Well, the thing we can't see in water is glass. You put a piece of glass in water and you can't see it. What I have here is something that I think is microbial glass.
Could you tell me what water, sir? Sir, can you tell me what laundromat you were at?
On 17th and what is that street? Severance? No, not Severance. Lorraine. 17th and Lorraine.
You can finish speaking.
Yeah, I'm not going to drink any more tap water. Not if I'm drinking glass.
Thank you. We'll resume discussion on, I'm sorry, is there anybody else for public comment that I didn't see? Thank you. We'll resume conversation on the consent agenda, please. Any remarks or questions from council regarding the consent agenda?
No.
No, I'd move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Item number 7A, consider an ordinance authorizing bond sales, Series 2025A, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Angela Richard, Director of Finance. We did bond sales for 2 different bonds today, one non-taxable and one taxable. So the first one that I am presenting is for the non-taxable, and it was for the purposes of Woody Seat renovations, City Hall safety, 30th Avenue reconstruct, the City Hall boiler, fire station preemption, and the LEC elevator repair. All those total $5,270,000. Just to kind of set the stage for what we were expecting today, we weren't really sure because the Moody's had downgraded the federal government's bond rating. And yesterday, banks were a little hesitant to bid on municipal bonds. So our financial advisor said that they had one bond issue yesterday where they only had one bid on it. So we were very fortunate to have 5 bids on this first bond. We were expecting an interest rate around 4.25%, and the lowest bid had 3.947%, up to the highest of 4.41%. So we are pleased with these results. And to accept these bond bids and issue the bonds, it first takes an ordinance which authorizes the issuance of delivery of the bonds and authorizes us to levy taxes to pay for the bonds. This is the first step. I do want to mention that the winning bidder offered a premium on their bid, so we were able to downsize the amount of the actual issuance. So when you make your motion, the amount of the bonds will be $5,190,000. Are there any questions?
I've read through the item. I have no questions. Any questions or remarks from council?
No, on the motion, do you need us to mention the 5,190,000?
Yes.
Okay.
I move to approve an ordinance totaling $5,180,000, authorizing bond sales.
Hold on, point of order.
Yeah.
5,190,000.
Excuse me, I wrote it down wrong. Bond sales, Series 2025A, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Bass?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Item 7B, consider a resolution authorizing bond sales, Series 2025A, and authorize the mayor to sign.
So the second part of accepting the first bonds 2025A is to adopt the resolution prescribing the form and details. And this just gives all the details about the terms of the bond agreements. Are there any questions?
Does this motion also need to include the 5,190,000?
Yes.
Okay.
I motion to approve a resolution authorizing bond sales of 5,190,000, Series 2025A, and authorize the mayor to sign. Second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Bass?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Item 7C, consider an ordinance authorizing bond sales, Series 2025B, and authorize the mayor to sign.
The second bond sale was for the taxable, and these bonds are to be issued to pay for the atrium demolition. That is why they are taxable. So we bid those. We had 3 bidders. The lowest was 5.5% up to 5.71%. The reason it is higher is because they are taxable, meaning that they don't get a tax break on the interest received from these. We were expecting about 5.74%, so we are pleased with these results as well. So again, this would take a motion to approve the ordinance, and the amount is what's in your packet. It is the $1,065,000. There was no premium on this issue. Are there any questions?
I'd make a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing bond sales, Series 2025B, and authorize the mayor to sign. I'll second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Bass?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Item 7D, consider a resolution authorizing bond sales, Series 2025B, and authorize the mayor to sign.
This is the resolution prescribing the form and the details of the bond issue. And again, the amount is the same, $1,065,000.
I move to approve a resolution authorizing bond sales, Series 2025B, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Bass?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Thank you, council.
Item 7E, consider an ordinance approving a zoning change from R3 Moderate Density Residential District to R5 High Density Residential District, generally located at the northeast corner of 36th Avenue and Monroe Street, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Matt Williams, Director of Community Development. This case is ZA 2504, the rezoning of 14 acres located at the northeast corner of 36th and Monroe from R3 Moderate Density Residential District to R5 High Density Residential District. This case was presented to Council on May 6th and was tabled until today. There are only 2 updates I have since the last meeting. Number 1, I provided an updated ordinance in your packet that has been revised to state that the recommended protective overlay would limit the uses to single-unit living with a minimum lot area of 6,500 square feet and a minimum frontage of 60 feet at the front setback. Those were the conditions that both council and the applicant seemed agreeable to at the last meeting. And then the other update is that the applicant has provided a tentative lot layout. Let me get to that real quick. This lot layout proposes lots that range from 6,500 square feet to 20,000 square feet. It also proposes 2 access points to the neighborhood that would both exit to the west onto Monroe. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
In regards, could you walk us through the process of determining drainage off of this property, particularly on the south side where the easement is for 36th? How that would play out once it goes into plating?
So if the zoning were to be approved, then the applicant's engineer would likely move forward with a plating process. They would reach out to our engineers. We would need to see drainage plan that indicates where the drainage would go. Our engineers would look at that and approve that. I believe last time they indicated drainage would be just south of that first street and then drain to the east where the neighborhood to the east has an existing drainage ditch.
Just south of the south of the street on the north side?
Yes.
There, where it shows on the right side of the screen?
With a little line that comes out to the east, but I'm sure the applicant's agent would be able to speak to that.
Is the applicant's agent here tonight? What are the green lines?
The green lines are where they have started looking at where utilities may be.
Oh, gotcha.
So sewer and water, green would be sewer.
So after, if this gets approved, could you give us a quick tutorial on how the plating process works with the city of Hutchinson?
Yeah, so if this were approved, what we're looking at here is really just kind of a concept of a lot layout with tentative utilities. The actual plat that the applicant would need to go through, there's a preliminary plat and a final plat that would be a drawing similar to this but have much more detail, grading contours, existing trees, buildings, proposed utilities, lot sizes, information about this proposed streets, all the infrastructure. That would come to Planning Commission. Planning Commission review that. Our subdivision regulations have very strict requirements for all of those things. There'd be it'd go to Planning Commission where the public could speak on it. The final plat would then come. Sometimes it's the same night, sometimes the final plat comes later, and then Planning Commission would make a recommendation to City Council again, or this would come back for your vote.
And if the plat is approved after that, it's a matter of pulling permits?
Correct.
Okay.
If there were to be an HOA, that would happen during the platting process, correct?
If there is an HOA, that during the platting process, we would indicate that on the plat.
And that would be pursued by the developer.
That would be pursued by the developer. And if there were covenants that went along with that, some of that language would go on the plat.
Okay. And I asked you earlier about accessory dwelling units or ADUs. How would those be considered in this area?
Accessory dwelling units, we would consider a separate use. So normally in this zoning, or in the zoning around it, accessory dwelling units would be permitted. But the proposed protective overlay limits it to single family, so accessory dwelling units would not be permitted.
Okay. Thank you.
I noticed on his plating, there's some 6,000 square foot lots. I assume he'll change that.
On this drawing?
Yes.
On this drawing, the smallest one is 6,550, I believe.
I think those are two.
Several of these are
Yeah,
6,600.
Well, I knew I couldn't hear.
Look
I guess I
behind you.
can't see
Like,
either.
you can see it
Well,
on the screen
maybe
behind
that
you.
would be better if I looked at it. I thought it was 6,000. Gotcha.
And on the furthest south line of homes that we're looking at, those lots, the smallest one is 7,517 square feet. And then obviously the ones on a curve are much larger.
So I will say that it feels different seeing the plat at this point, or the suggested plat at this point in the process. One of the concerns that I have, which obviously would have to be taken up by planning and zoning, is that the driveways that are coming off of Monroe are incredibly narrow, and I think the goal would be to avoid cars stacking on Monroe as they're entering into the property. What would be the lot that's 9,184 square feet in the top left? How many linear feet is that right there? It's a pop quiz.
How
Like,
long the lot is?
How many cars do you think you'd be able to stack in that area?
So are you talking about cars that
Well,
are exiting the neighborhood going
yeah.
onto Monroe?
I'm thinking of both ways, yeah.
I do not.
4 or 5 probably.
6, 7, I don't know. All of the driveways, so the lot you're referencing would have a driveway into the development, not
Right.
onto Monroe.
Right.
And during the platting process, we would look at things like, would a traffic study be warranted to see if any improvements needed to happen on Monroe? And then the reason we don't approve a plat at this phase is because they could get in there and do engineering and find that, they need a drainage pond somewhere and the lots could change. So that's why we can't guarantee this concept at this point.
This is all conceptual with intent.
Right. Any additional questions for Mr. Williams?
When they present when anyone, just generally, presents a subdivision, are they allowed to put extra covenants up and beyond our regulations?
Correct,
Without
yeah.
having to do an HOA, just putting covenants on the subdivision?
Usually covenants, they need an enforcement agency, which would be the HOA, because covenants, once they're in a neighborhood, the city does not control those, so I believe it would need an HOA. Maybe Paul knows the answer to that.
It could be an HOA, or the restrictive covenants could be noted on the plat itself. They still have to be enforced by adjoining property owners.
Right.
My thoughts are that the protective overlays go so far as to limit what the developer could potentially do with the property. But in the future, and I think this speaks to the concerns of the neighbors in the area, the concern is what the future residents would possibly do. And so like the ADUs not being allowed, for instance, I think is a step in the right direction. I think there are other things that would have to be addressed with covenants, but that's something that would have to be addressed by the developer and not by council, and that would have to go to planning and zoning, or potentially could be filed. You would file a later HOA. You would file in the district, in the county court, or do you file it with the city?
HOA is agreement amongst the property owners.
But can't a developer, like, after they've built so many houses, can't they turn it into an HOA? Or, no?
It's still the property owners. If they own all the property, they can put that into effect. But it still takes the agreement of all the property owners, which is why it's done from the very beginning.
Right.
So if it happened after
before
some of the houses were sold, they would have to get those people to agree to it.
And get the developer to agree, because he would own the remaining properties. Any additional questions for Mr. Williams? Would the developer's agent like to speak?
So, Ken Lee with Garver, agent for the applicant. The applicant was not available tonight. He owns property in Garden Plain, and some kids broke into his houses, and the sheriff caught them. So they're having a meeting with the families, the kids, and the sheriff tonight to talk about living better lives. So, unfortunately, he's not available tonight. So we've seen most of this before. I did want to point out there was a question about drainage, and obviously all this is preliminary and subject to change, but the darker lines you see on that drawing that kind of run parallel with Monroe and then run east-west along the back property lines, Those are proposed storm sewer lines. So we're proposing to extend storm sewer around the perimeter to pick up as much drainage here. The natural drainage for the site is already to the east, but just to pick up as much water to reduce impact on Monroe drainage and those kind of things, just to make sure that water follows its existing pattern. We've got a pretty robust storm sewer system planned. So I just wanted to mention that as far as one of the questions came up. A couple of things I'll just touch on. You asked earlier about the plating process and all that. There is a step between the plating and the permits, pulling permits, that has to occur, and that's going to be the infrastructure design. So what we'll do with that is we typically will work with the city of Hutch, and they're going to be requesting special assessments on this. So we would do the engineering design. The city would actually be the owner of that project, and we would do the design plans. It would get constructed, and then the owners of the lots would repay those specials over time. So that's an intermediate step between the plating and the permitting that would come up. And that's another opportunity for the city to make sure that our design does meet the standards that are required for the city. On the idea of the HOA, I'll just touch on what will typically happen is they will create an HOA to start with, and the developer will be the manager of the HOA because he owns the majority of the lots. And he will continue to be the deciding party on the HOA until such times there's more residents than there are, or residential owned lots rather than the lots he owns. So there's most likely there'll be an HOA from the beginning. And then somebody had asked about covenants, and I live in a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA, but we do have restrictive covenants. And the catch with it is the enforcement only works when the developer is still involved with it, because like we have minimum lot sizes, we have required fencing and those kind of things. The enforcement of the covenants kind of becomes problematic if you don't have an HOA in the long term. But so I just wanted to point out those couple things. As far as the project goes, we did part of the process here is finding out what the neighbors are concerned about, and it was made very clear that there was no desire to have a connection. And so you can see we added that cul-de-sac at the southeast corner to eliminate that connection between the neighborhoods. And as we discussed, we did put larger lots on the east and south side to kind of provide fewer houses that would be abutting the neighbors in those areas. The two connections there are onto Monroe itself. The southerly connection is lined up directly across from Monterey Place, and you want to have that just for safety of turn movements. You don't want awkward, weird offset movements. The north one lines up with the house across the street. There's no street in near there, so, but it does have the two entrances that are desired on that. As was mentioned, the minimum lot size we have shown is 6550. We will, as we go through the process, refine this a little bit. There may be minor changes as we develop utilities and such, the utility plans. Occasionally and I'm not sure here, but Evergy, where we do most of our work, is wanting to front load their electric service nowadays, so we don't have as much rear utility service as we used to, but there could be rear yard easements that are requested, or side yard easements requested by utilities, so there may be some minor changes. With that, we went over a lot of this last week. I'll just take any questions.
I think what I would like to see, like my feedback on the drawing is, first of all, thank you for the closure at the bottom right. I think that's helpful and goes a long way to build trust with the residents and with the council, because that is essentially what we asked for in conversations. But the thing that I would like to see is a wider exits from the neighborhood. It just feels like as cars are turning possibly haphazardly into the neighborhood, to avoid oncoming traffic and whatnot, that you would want to have as wide of a entry as possible. And that just feels really tight, that it's not any wider than just a normal residential street.
On a lot of our additions, we'll do at least one entrance, which we'll call a major entrance, where it'll have a 16 to 20 foot wide entry lane, and then an island, and then a 24-foot wide exit lane. So it kind of separates. Is that kind of what you would have in mind?
One with an island. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll mention too, you asked about the depth of that lot. The minimum lot depth out on this project right now is 110 feet, except for maybe the cul-de-sac. So that's probably 140 feet, which is enough to stack probably 6 cars.
Okay. And will your main entry also have like neighborhood signage or something like that? Like presumptively that the HOA would maintain and ensure.
Yeah, we can talk to Eric about what kind of signage. He doesn't have a specific plan for this point, but a lot of times that we will do entry monuments to kind of make it easier for marketing. Somebody coming up can go, oh, here's where I need to turn in. So we can talk to him about that. Sometimes your ability to install monument signs can be inhibited by utilities that might be running in the area, so we just have to look at that as well.
Thank you. Any additional questions or remarks from council? Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this item?
Jordan Fee, 3407 Arrowhead Drive. I appreciate council tabling this 2 weeks ago. While that city council meeting was very informative, the additional time has allowed a lot of us, myself including, to gather more information, connect directly with the developer, and get an idea behind the why, the need for the rezone, which really that's kind of where this is all started, why the need to rezone land that's been zoned a certain way for 60 years. It's never been about anti-housing development, never been about development but not in my backyard, which I've heard. It's all been about understanding the rezone process and how that fits strategically with the city's goals for attacking the housing need, which I know we have, and I know we haven't done as much, so maybe that's where a little bit of the kind of the education has needed to be had. So I'm appreciative for that additional time. I do want to acknowledge city staff. I know they've been tasked to find development, go and find developers, and they have certainly done that, and I'm appreciative for that. While I feel like the process and communication could get tightened up a bit, I do know that's not a simple fix. And so I did just want to make sure and understand, or tell them, make sure that understand that it's not a simple fix. And for any future development, especially when it comes to rezoning, over-communicating, over-producing information, especially to adjacent neighbors, would be very beneficial. And I think we get a lot more positive response quicker than we would the immediate dig the heels in and how's this going to affect me negatively. But I wanted to make sure and acknowledge city staff. Speaking of the developer, Eric Gilbert, it's been great to connect with him personally. He's been very open and amenable to any concerns that neighbors have had. He certainly hasn't had to do that, and he has, which is very appreciated. We've spoken a lot about what Ken, and I appreciate you being here tonight, has been spoken about tonight, which is cul-de-sacs, lot transition, even reserve area or additional green space to kind of dress up the transitions between the neighborhoods. We both agreed that that drainage study will be impactful to see and understand how that's going to maybe affect this platting process, how the city plans to handle the 36th Street easement, which we know as of now won't be going through. So I would ask just going forward that the city and council keeps in mind a lot of these things that have been agreed to, and to make sure they're accounted for when that final plat gets agreed to. But again, I wanted to thank Eric and Ken for how open and amenable that you all have been throughout this process. So, and finally, I just wanted to thank council as a body. You guys have taken on a lot of emails, phone calls, meetings. Scott, I know I've used a lot of your time. John, my district representative, a lot of the dialogue and information you provided has been extremely enlightening in this whole process, and I have certainly felt heard and well represented from you all as a body, and I'm very appreciative of that, and I certainly look forward to seeing how this develops going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, I have a question for you. If you could come back up, please. Two questions, actually. Number one is, so in reviewing the packet, did you add any additional information or letters or anything like that to the packet that were?
Not since 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing is, if the green lines on the screen indicate stormwater.
Green lines indicate sewer.
Sewer, okay.
storm water is the dark black line here. Through.
Okay, and so there is not a stormwater that would run on this, on the very bottom?
Looks like.
Okay, I see it now, thank you. So my question is, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, turning, I'm gonna say that Arrowhead? Okay, turning Arrowhead into more of like a cul-de-sac feel, would there, or could there be a need to, and this is something you don't have to answer right away, but connecting it to that drainage so that all of it runs together? Did that make sense? I don't think that made sense.
Connecting drainage that's coming down Arrowhead now, connecting it to the drainage as part of this plat?
Yeah. Will that all be connected in the hopes that we don't cause any accidental drainage issues on Arrowhead when we close off the street or disrupt the dirt, that sort of thing?
I don't know the answer to that. We can definitely look into it. I would say they're kind of separate issues. You know, if this plat were to go through, Arrowhead would not be turned into a roundabout. It would probably just stay exactly as it is. So if it were going to be turned into a roundabout or drainage improvements happen on that street, that would probably need to be a separate project.
And not a roundabout.
Just a cul-de-sac.
Like a
yeah.
dead end,
Yeah.
right, okay. Okay, that answered my questions. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience here to speak on this item? Any additional remarks or questions from council? I'm looking for a motion.
I would move to approve an ordinance for a zoning change from R3 moderate density residential district to R5 high density residential district, generally located at the northeast corner of 36th Avenue and Monroe Street, and authorize the mayor to sign.
And before we have a second, do we need to list the protective overlays in the motion?
Yeah, I think it would be good to list the protective overlay.
Do you have those somewhere that you could provide?
Yes.
I've got it right here. The protective overlay number one.
It's referenced in the proposed ordinance.
It's referenced in the ordinance.
Right underneath the zoning change, protective overlay in section 1.
Zoning change from R3 and then
Okay.
protective overlay number one right underneath it, which is
Oh, got
listed.
it, okay.
Single unit living, minimum lot area 6,500 and frontage of 60 feet to setback.
Thank you.
So my motion stands.
Yes, then need a second.
Second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Well, here I am. I want to thank you for your comments, sir. That was very appreciative. As you say, as you can tell, it does take a lot of work to sit up here as council.
Scott, I'm going to call the, I'm sorry, Steve, I'm going to call the question and you have to vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bass?
Yes.
Megers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes. Sorry.
That's fine.
Next item, please.
Item number 8, new business, City of Hutchinson Organizational Assessment and Strategic Plan.
Good evening, Council. Dave Sotelo, Director of Strategic Growth. I have with me Isabel Eversole, Kathy Sexton, and Sarah Gooding from Wichita State PPMC, who have been part of our strategic planning process. They have an update for you from the steps that we've taken thus far, and you're going to hear a presentation on the organizational assessment section of the strategic plan, and you can find that on page 181 of your packet. And I'll let them take it away.
Hello, everyone. Kathy Sexton. It's been a bit since we've seen you, last September, I think, when we were before you, so it's a pleasure to be here again tonight with my colleagues Sarah Gooding and Isabel Ebersole, who have been working on this project, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes just to give you an update. The goal tonight is essentially to tell you kind of where we've been, where we're at right now with the project, and what's next. So does that sound good? All right, thank you. So I better find a clicker here. How do I advance the slides? Here we go. Okay, that's awesome, thank you. So project background-wise, you all approved starting this process in September. Since then, we have completed the org assessment. We'll go over that in a minute, and then start the strategic planning phase 2 this summer. So what's the org assessment? What we did first was interview some of the key staff in some focus group type interviews, learned some things there, interviewed each of you all around about December, if I remember right, some individual phone calls. And then we have just recently completed the review of some planning documents, and that big document is in your packet, and also just finished up the staff survey. So that was sent out for all your staff and got a good response rate, and Isabel is going to review that for a good portion of this evening's update. But first, I just want to give you a little bit about what we've learned so far. So after interviewing each of you, some of our themes were simply that you were looking for, we asked you, what do you want to get out of the strategic planning process? And what we learned was you're looking to make sure that there's clarity on the goals for your staff, for your city manager, and for the city going forward, including future councils, okay? So that you had interest when we talked last December about making sure we have an ongoing plan that is not disrupted per se by changes in staffing and or council. You asked us to focus on the basic infrastructure. In other words, I heard a desire for you to say, what is the role of the city versus other organizations in town? And clarifying that role means the city can't be all things to all people. You simply do not have the resources for that, so you got to focus. And so your planning process that'll be starting here soon will be focused on thinking, what are the core services, the core mission of the city, and what needs to be addressed? For example, emerging needs. How do you address those when you're pretty busy as it is addressing some of the basic needs of the community and the infrastructure and such? But one of the ways that came out was your desire to make sure some of the community partnerships, the long-standing legacy relationships and sort of agreements that have maybe started decades ago are maybe documented and or updated to meet changing needs. So clarifying the role of the city in several areas is one of our goals of the process, as well as addressing critical issues. So for example, some of the critical issues that you all talked about was the economics, the economy. How do we get people to visit Hutchinson? How do we get people to live and choose to live here versus get a job here and maybe they're driving back and forth from another community? And how do we address trust between residents and city staff and increase that and make sure that's done well as well? And the last point I would just say is to separate process issues from policy issues, being clear about what's trying to be accomplished and sort through some of the excess there. And so the review of the planning documents. I'm so excited about this part. This is an unusual part, kind of new for us, honestly, because typically we would do a community survey or some such to figure out what does the community want. But in your case, and this document is in your packet, but you could see that we kept hearing through the interviews, well, there's a survey on this, and there was a study on that, and the chamber did this study, and the community foundation did that study. So it seemed like there had been a lot of studies and reports and surveys, so there seemed to be a little fatigue. So what we said was, okay, why don't we just gather them all up and read them through, and had some good research help, but we were able to summarize, not by document, but by theme. So 13 issue areas are summarized in the document in your packet from reviewing 19 different plans, reports, master plans, strategic plans, you name it. There's a lot of nice words in there. 15 of those have been done since 2022. Now, not all city, not near all city, but about the city, right? About the community. So some of them very recent information, and putting those all together, we came into these 13 issue areas. And if you go to that document, I don't know how many of you have had a chance to read that yet. So we're not going to go into details of those 13 different issue areas, but each issue area has in that report not only what we're hearing, but also some recommendations going forward. So I'm from the university, so I'm gonna give you homework. How about that? Are you ready for homework?
We're jumping with excitement.
We gotta have something a little different, don't we? Do you like yellow?
I do.
Do you like blue?
I do.
So what I'm giving you is a highlighter and a red pen. And when you go through that document of all these themes and ideas, what I would love for you to do is mark what is important to you, right? Because there's so much in there, but the city can't do everything, right? So mark what you think is important, what questions you have with your red pen. What does this mean? This is crazy. I don't want to do this. This is my most important thing. If you get my drift, because then that will give us that next step. So as we think about strategic planning being the next step, we're going to be working on, like in August, September, coming back and having a workshop with you all and really cranking out what's the vision, what's the mission, what are the goals, objectives, action plans, et cetera. Does that make sense? So just to finish up before we have Isabel tell you a little bit more about the employee survey and what we learned from that, I would just say that first we did the focus groups with a few employees before we wrote the survey. And in that, some of the things we learned is that some of the city employees were feeling like they felt like their work day was chaotic in some ways, in that, okay, I start my day out, I know these are the things I'm going to accomplish, but then there's always a fire to put out, so to speak. Not talking about the fire department, okay? There's always a problem. There's always something different to do, and also staff shortages. We need more help, and there's not enough time. So little chaotic they were feeling, and this survey, these focus groups were done a few months ago, okay? But we got them to talk about their happiest moments on the job. In other words, why do you like working for the city? What's rewarding about being a public servant? And so you can see there some of what their positives were. Their stressors in terms of having too many things going on and not being able to accomplish, which we all get that satisfaction from accomplishing, right? And then coordinating the interdepartmental efforts or outside partnerships too that were more complex and a little more stressful. Employees talked about needing clarity and alignment to act on the priorities. In other words, they too are looking forward to the strategic planning process, and we felt a lot of energy from the employees and appreciation for the council for taking on the strategic planning process so that we can get on paper and they can feel the vision and they can feel like they're headed in the same direction as you all are. So optimism is good from the employees, and I'll ask Isabel to come up and talk a little bit more. She has a lot of slides, but she goes through them pretty rapidly. But she's wanting to help you all understand where the employees were on things. Is that cool? Is that good if we go to the survey, Isabel?
Thank you. Hi, Mayor. Hi, council members. Thanks for having me. I think we'll be able to give you a little bit more detail on what was found in those focus groups. So we'll start with them. Kathy mentioned we got to meet with different levels of employees, and that taught us a few things about your organizational culture, but we really leaned into those things as well as some of our existing methods to develop a very comprehensive survey, looking to learn about the employee experience, their priorities, opportunities for improvement and concerns. We had a 66% response rate, which I would say is to be expected in a city like Hutch, especially being that this was the first organized survey that you've done like this for staff in a while, if not in recent memory. So positive response there. We, as a leadership team for the project, decided to optionally allow people to disclose what department they work for. I'm happy to say 96% of people felt confident enough to do so. You'll see later on this was important because we wanted to see if there were differences based on department. That in an organization like Hutch, okay, so 70% of your employees feel this way. How does that break down departmentally given the varying cultures and experiences of different employees? So that was a real positive there. We gave them the chance to opt out. They trusted what we were going to do with this information and their department. So positive there. And then to maintain anonymity for those small departments like HR, IT, strategic growth. We lumped them all into a department we call administration in order to protect anonymity. And then parks and facilities and airport were also combined to maintain anonymity there. Before we jump into the findings, I also want to set the ground for some limitations. We cannot establish causal relationships with the survey results like these, but what we can say are correlations. So you'll notice throughout the report and the presentation that departmental trends, departmental correlations were common. But our ability to understand the underlying reasons why departments feel differently is limited. We'd have to do much more in-depth research for that. So instead, as a type of proxy or a way to contextualize these differences, we gave you some demographic data about departments. So we collected information on gender, race, and ethnicity. These three things alone cannot explain whole department differences, but they can go a short ways in starting to pinpoint those. So starting with that, those with a higher than average Hispanic or Latino representation are police, utilities, parks, facilities, and airport. And then you'll see a list of those with higher respondents of color as well. And then we also looked at gender. So there's a higher than average female representation in those three departments, and then higher than average male representation. Again, we can't say causally whether things like gender or race or department are what causes someone's response, but we can say that there are correlations there. So just to set the ground with that. I'm going to run through these findings in two tiers. First is thematic category. So how do you feel about your supervisor? How do you feel about your city manager? How do you feel about working with people from other departments? But then within those, there are findings that are low variance, meaning most people agreed. We're not going to spend as much time on those, but places where there are high variance, we will linger a little bit longer. And I tried to distinguish those visually. Slides with high variance are brown at the top, and those with low variance are yellow at the top. And then just a little note on rounding. If things don't add up to 100%, they're likely 99 or 101, but we abide by typical rounding practices there. So without further ado, we'll start with feedback about immediate supervisors. Starting with this low variance, there's very high trust in immediate supervisors. 79% people say they trust completely or quite a bit. 98% of respondents think that their supervisor is receptive to new ideas or suggestions. Very positive there. And then in addition to them being receptive, they feel confident that their supervisor will follow through on those new ideas or suggestions. There was no high variance findings among supervisors. So we'll move on to department directors. Again, relatively high trust here, 72% trusting either quite a bit or completely. And similarly, about 70% indicate that their department directors seek out their feedback either often or sometimes. And then in addition to that feedback, 84% agree that department directors are accountable to their staff. So positive leadership findings there. Slightly greater variance in the frequency of personal interactions with department directors. There were some departmental differences here, but I think that they're probably less than they appear. So those in larger departments, police and fire, were more likely to indicate variance, some saying that they saw their department director often, some saying never. But those who reported lower rates of interaction might have an intermediary supervisor, like we just talked about, that they see more frequently. So I think the biggest takeaway here is that there's high trust across the board in leadership, whereas the frequency of interaction might be less important here. And then at the top here, we have perceptions of city manager. Due to the distance that there might be between employees in the organization and the city manager, we did allow some folks to opt out of answering these questions. They could say, I don't know, or I have no idea. So just wanted to disclose that an average of 23% of respondents elected not to provide feedback on the city manager before we jump in. Overall, low variance, meaning very consistent, exceptional, and average ratings across the board. These are the dimensions we asked about: visibility, community involvement, demonstrated expertise and ability. Of these things, community involvement was rated the lowest at 70%, but that's still exceptional and average there. And across the board, high satisfaction with communication from the city manager. Overwhelmingly, folks are wanting to be communicated via an email, not looking for scheduled team meetings with the city manager. Greater variance in requests for frequency of communications from the city manager, but positively, over half know the process for providing feedback to him. Next, we had a set of questions about support services or impact services. Before asking about those specifics, we wanted to know who employees turn to when they're stressed at work. A large majority are turning to people outside of work. Some are turning to colleagues. The reason that's over 100% is because folks were allowed to select as many people as applied to them. 82% have never used impact services, and of those 82%, they say they don't need them, about half of folks. Others are saying that they're just not aware of the program. It's about 21% there. However, of the 18% of respondents who have used impact services, 80% say they would recommend. Sticking with that small 18% of impact users, we asked them about their frequency of using the services. 40% are using once to twice a year. 40% preferred not to answer this question. So again, calling back to the fact that only 18% of respondents have used the services. This is a very small group of them. But all of those 40% who preferred not to answer have worked for the city for less than 12 months. So that was one of the variables we were looking at, was longevity with the city. We didn't find a ton of differences based off that, but this was one of them. All right, next we have some positively low variance things. The first being workplace culture. Almost 100% of respondents report having positive relationships with their colleagues. Near 90% report enjoy coming to work. And then similarly on work-life balance, near 90% say their workload is manageable, and 78% say they are encouraged to take time off when needed. This last point here on supervisory support, if you'll recall the earlier slide about employees who turn to their colleagues when stressed at work, 93% of those who agreed with this statement also say that they're going to their supervisor when they're stressed at work. So positive relationship there between supervisory support and willingness to go to them when they need help. Another low variance here was on department culture. Almost 100% were proud to be a part of their department. 91% understand what their department's goals are. Lowest here, 66% were included in planning and goal setting for their department. But I think structure of the city, that is to be expected. We asked about communications within the department, not across the city, but just within their department there. 80% are satisfied, 77% feel communications are clear and consistent, 74% feel that they are effectively communicating decisions and change. And then lastly, in the same way that we asked about how employees would like to receive communications from the city manager, we also asked how they would like to receive communications from their department. Overwhelmingly, email here, slightly more requests for in-person informal conversations or team meetings, but again, to be expected at the department level. All right, next topic is relationships with employees from other departments. I want to start with the high variance findings here because the low variance sort of piggyback off of it. So you'll see the pie chart shows that 37% of respondents say that they don't know their employees from other departments well at all. 33% say somewhat well. There were some departmental differences, which I think show us some interesting things. Those who say they know colleagues well, administration, remember those were HR, IT, strategic growth, and other small departments. Finance and community development are likely to say that they know others from other departments well. I think that makes sense sense given their role in the city, working with other departments and their leaders more closely, compared to those who know colleagues not well at all, which tended to be from parks and facilities and airport, police, and emergency communications. I think we can observe from the nature of those jobs they might be less likely to interact with others. We asked those who know employees well, what has helped you get to know others best? So jumping to the second bullet here, 53% say working on collaborative projects or tasks, or just their own personal initiative to reach out. Of those who said they do not know employees from other departments well, most people say it's to do with having different work locations or not enough chances to meet.
Did you ask about shift work at all?
No, we did not. Something to note for the future, though. Thank you. All right, in that same vein, we had a section of questions about joint partnerships. So first we asked if the respondent had ever been involved with a community partnership effort, if they had been in the past but aren't currently, or if they never have. Positively, of those who are currently involved or have been involved, they said joint efforts are both good for the community, but slightly less productive effort based on trusting relationships. So saying the outcome is good for the community overall, but that the relationships between the city and partners have room to improve there. We had a section about access to information. Positively, 95% of respondents agreed they have all of the information they need to do their job effectively, so that is not a concern there. And then another set of questions was about resource use. So we broke this into two categories, the first being perception of resource use within your department, and then perception of resource use across the city overall. So starting with resource use across the whole organization, 70% of employees felt resources are mostly or always used appropriately. No respondent said that they are never used appropriately. There was, we'll get to budget here very soon, but there was a significant correlation between whether you felt resources were used appropriately and feeling informed about the budget. So those who indicated they were more informed about the budget were more likely to say that they felt resources were used appropriately, and vice versa. This indicates that there's some positive things happening with budget information sharing there. And then slightly less consensus on the appropriateness of resource use within their department. 28% said always as compared to 11% always across the org overall. And again, there was a significant relationship between those who feel informed about budget and those who feel like resources are used appropriately. There were some departmental differences here as well. The report goes into more detail, but listed here for your review. All right, a set of questions was about future plans for the department. Here's some positives to start out with. 90% of respondents feel they know how the work that they do every day will contribute to the city's future, and 90% believe the city's actions will positively impact the future. Slightly less agreement, although overall still positive, on whether the city's plans for the future have been communicated, confidence in city leadership to carry out the plans for a successful future, satisfaction with current plans, and then community members' trust in the city to execute those plans. I think a notable, or the most notable on this slide would be the first there, especially given the previous point about communication about the budget process and your perception of resource use. And to the budget questions that I've been mentioning, we asked how informed do you feel the budget process, or how informed are you about the budget process? How transparent do you feel the budget process is, and what is your desired level of involvement? Again, those asterisks indicate that knowledge drives engagement. So those who have a greater desire to be involved in the process are also wanting to be more informed. Compensation and benefits here. Under half of respondents say that pay is a main reason that they work for the city. Almost a straight flip there. Slightly over half agree that benefits are a main reason they work for the city, but 72% say they're satisfied with their hourly or salary rate. Our last section here were questions for supervisors only. Only 54% of supervisors agree that they are receiving adequate training or support. The other half disagree. We asked what type of training are they most interested in receiving. Again, these are over 100 because you can select all, but they're most looking for leadership and management skills. But still over half are looking for communication and interpersonal skills. Supervisors are in that somewhat range when it comes to hiring, with 42% feeling it's somewhat easy and 37% feeling somewhat difficult. But they say to improve the hiring process on their end, increasing salaries and benefit packages and focusing on retention would be helpful. Some concluding thoughts here, starting with the positives. There are both strong workplace and departmental cultures, high trust and leadership at all levels, and a very clear understanding of how what each person is doing on the day-to-day connects to the city's overall goals and mission. 3, opportunities for improvement related to relationships across departments, information sharing as far as budgeting and resource use goes, and then additional support for training needs identified by supervisors. That's all I've got.
I have a question.
Yes.
So it was listed parks and facilities and airport. Were those folks considered all in one department or as 2 separate departments but listed on the same line?
They were lumped as one department for analysis.
Okay.
So parks and facilities, I forget what our number was. I think it was 15 employees was the minimum for a Department 2 standalone. Airport has less than that, so they were lumped with parks and facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or feedback?
Well, thank you very much. And more questions arise, we can certainly take them. We are here to answer any questions you all might have, but mostly we're here to let you know we pretty much completed the assessment part. You got to hear what the employees are thinking. As we've learned, and you all know, there's been some level of turnover in your staff. This is common in all cities and certainly many organizations these days in terms of sort of the post-pandemic curve and how it's going, and there's the baby boomer retirements happening and the bringing up of the younger generation. And so we weren't surprised with some of the findings. Supervisors want more training and knowledge and leadership skills, that kind of thing. We're seeing that everywhere. We're also seeing organizations that aren't used to that. I mean, they don't necessarily, it's not easy to find that kind of training. So what we have been able to accomplish so far is not just hearing the community input through all the various studies and that summary that you have before you, hearing your input and hearing the employee input. So we already have some areas that management is looking at. And then our next steps are spend a couple months this summer working on the next piece of this project, which is the influencing factors report. It's a very brief document, and we'll start working on it next week. But that is essentially like, what are the measures that we should be looking at or are looking at or maybe would want to look at but haven't really started putting that together yet. So we'll look at those influencing factors. What affects the city's ability to make progress on its primary goals? And then, as I mentioned earlier, August-September timeframe, we're trying to get a date set for a council workshop to focus on building the strategic plan. As you can imagine, it's not our plan. It's not WSU's plan. It's your plan. So even though there's a lot of advice and ideas and recommendations in, I think it's a 24-page document you have for summarizing the 19 plans, obviously the city can't do everything in there. Even though we've gathered that information, that's why I gave you the highlighter and the red pen. So you can, as you go through it, feel free to give me any input you may have about this. Sure, this is a community need, but so-and-so's addressing it, or the city doesn't do this, or we want input on this or that. Whatever your questions or comments might be would be helpful to us, and I think really jumpstart the drafting of the planning documents. So, having said that, we're available for any questions or comments you all might have. Well, thank you all very much for your time. We will keep working and keep you apprised.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a word that can solve all of this.
Can you come to the podium, please?
Cooperation.
Oh, okay. So for those who are watching at home, they can't see or hear you. From the audience, the gentleman said that he has a word that would solve all of this, and that word is cooperation. Thank you for your feedback. Next item, please.
Item 9, report of city officials. Council.
Mr. Garza, you are first.
Okay, first of all, I want to say this. What just happened is a place of organization, like this man said. We have rules and regulations that we're supposed to go by as council members. And the mayor called what she did was right, and I think she did. I like to speak, and what she did was the format that we're supposed to go by. So we're a good council, we get along, and just want to let you know, there's nothing big about it. We get along very good. You have a very good council. On the second thing, sir, I want to let you know that we don't ignore you. I would suggest to the manager that we get our truck out there. We have a service truck that goes out and checks waters in different houses. I would suggest that we'll send a truck out there to that laundromat, because that laundromat was the problem right there. Okay, it could be a broken line. It could be a lot of different things that.
It was in my home too.
Oh, okay, wherever it is, we need to go send a service truck to your house, take some samples out of it, and see what we can find what the problem is. I don't want you to think that we're ignoring you. All the time that I sat here and just going through our process that we have to go through, I'm thinking about you, and we will send a truck out there, because we do testing all over the city, and I don't want you to think we forget about you, because we don't. This is a good council. We'll send a truck out there and do a test on your water, see what we can find. I've been working for the city before. I was an electrician for the city, and I know we got trucks that do that kind of stuff. So don't think that we forgot, especially up here on TV. We don't forget you. So we will send a truck out there to you. Okay. Last but not least, I had a meeting this last Saturday. Great audience came out and did what they're supposed to do. Answered me a lot of questions. We went over stuff. A lot of things I think on this housing that we did, it's called cooperation. The citizens came together, everybody came together to get this thing done on the housing. And that's why I wanted to speak, because the man said thing, it's great. It's a good start for Hutch. We got to get houses going, and this is a start. We're on our way to a start. And don't ever think that we don't get along, because we do get along up here. We have to do what we have to do. I just want to make sure everybody understand me, that there's rules and regulations we got to go by. But me, as being Steve Garza, he speaks when he wants to speak. So that's all I want to say. It's a great council, and we'll take care of you, sir. Okay? That's all I got, Mayor.
Mr. Richardson.
The Salt City Racing this Friday, I think it's Children's Night or Kids Night. There's going to be some activities for kids Friday of Memorial Day weekend. I know we had some severe weather. There's a lot of questions regarding tornado sirens, why those didn't go off in the city of Hutchinson. City of Hutchinson was never in the actual tornado warning itself. But there are services to alert you on your mobile devices. I would highly recommend you get a radio or have those services set up on your cell phone to alert you, because the sirens are actually designed to alert you if you're outside. You may be inside your house or in an interior room and you may not be able to hear it, so having another form of hearing those warnings would be very important. And that's all I have.
Y'all are stealing all my content. Mr. Fast.
I'll steal the rest of them. I attended the Biker Mayhem last Saturday downtown at Salty Cycles. Great event. You know, Ms. Sexton was talking about one of the points we're trying to figure out is how do we get more people to town for events, for housing. I don't know how many people attended that thing, but that was good for Hutchinson, and that was a really cool event. I also attended Garza's meeting and heard several concerns from around the Woody Seat construction. I want those folks to know that we are addressing those concerns, specifically the lighting issues around the Woody Seat construction. Cecil is working on that, possibly some solar lighting or possibly some Evergy temporary lines. Still concerned about the Martinez Trail connection at the end of Avenue A. We've talked about that for quite a while. I'm just mentioning it to bring it up to a level of, a part of this improvement of that area of town. Wanted folks to know also that the entrance to Cary Park is being addressed, as well as some other stonework in the park. And Steve, thank you for having that meeting. I enjoyed attending and enjoy hearing the feedback, what people are thinking. That's all I have.
Mr. Meggers.
Well, first off, I have to congratulate you on your donut championship.
Thank you.
That was amazing. I don't know that I could eat that many donuts that quickly.
You got to try.
Secondly, I want to kind of basically echo a lot of the comments already made about the races, community involvement, people reaching out to us to express our concerns. Because we do listen to what you're saying, and we try to relay that to whoever it affects in the city. The Memorial Hall, I felt that went well. I know we had some pushback on how it was the format, but I thought Dave and Jessica did a great job with that. We had a great turnout, a lot of great comments in public as well as what was sent in. One question I did have, I don't think anybody's in here from engineering. Maybe you can answer, Enrico. I've had questions about, like, on the waterline projects, when they start, because I know they get percentages of how far along they are. What's the process usually, timeline from beginning to start phase on some of those?
That varies significantly based on location. Part of it, when you do a shutdown, how that's impacting the residents that are tied on to the main. But do you have a specific project in mind?
The Spyglass edition out there, the waterline out there.
Oh, like for
the question
petitions?
was actually when the process will actually go into installation, I guess, because I know it's still in engineering right now. I just didn't know. I've had people reach out asking how long that process takes to actually get to installation. So
I'll get an answer for you.
okay, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. So
No, it's fine. I mean, just with water lines in general, like the Severance water main, that took a while just because it continued to rupture in places. So
okay,
I wasn't sure which one you were talking about.
okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, I got one, can I say one more thing? I like to call executive sessions or some things. I like to talk to my former council member in executive session. Is that possible today?
I would defer to the mayor.
How much time would you need?
Probably about 20 minutes, not much.
Can you and Paul go have a aside to talk about the legality of it? Because there are some topics that we can't have
Oh, I
executive
understand that.
session about.
I understand that.
So can you go discuss with Paul what that would be right now? And then I'll let you know if we can do it. He'll let us know if we can do it. Unless you want to state what the subject is right now and have that discussion.
What do you think, Paul?
I'm not sure. You haven't told me what it is.
So I'm
If you
giving
wanna
you an
have that
opportunity to go
private-
have a private conversation with him for just a minute and then come back and tell me. And I didn't say no. I just said maybe. So I don't recall when this was, but probably 3 weeks ago, had a walking meeting with the a number of Farmington Park residents, a small number of residents who are concerned about lighting in the area. I have forwarded the results from that meeting on to Mr. Villegas for consideration. And I just wanted to say thank you to Denise, who's not here tonight, from Hutch Rec, as well as the residents who were in attendance for taking their time to express their concerns, which are shared by council and city staff as well. At Mr. Garza's meeting on Saturday, those in attendance were given a handout with engineering information. I shared that on social media, and it was also shared by the Hutch Post. So there's good information about some upcoming projects. It's out there if you go look for it. The race is Friday. Kids get in free, so everybody come and bring all the kids. And then the school zone flashers, that work will begin. We have 3 school zones going up. Cecil, do you remember HMS 7, HMS 8, and nope. I'd have to find it.
It was HMS 7, I believe it is HMS 8, and then
Graber.
Graber, yes.
Okay, thank you. So that work will be completed over the summer. I'm giving you a wide window there, Cecil, in time for back to school in August. The 30th and Main project is scheduled to reopen on the 24th, last I heard, which was on Saturday. If not then by the 30th. That is all I have. And just to echo Mr. Richardson's remarks about the Everbridge alerts, which were just shared on the City of Hutch Facebook page, those are incredibly important. We weren't in a situation that warranted sounding the alarms. However, if you had the alerts set up, you would have gotten 14 notifications, text and email throughout the night, and those are customizable. I will continue making that pitch as I have for the past 2 years to everybody. They're very important. And Mr. Garza, what did you guys decide?
We'll get to that in just a moment.
Okay. Mr. Villegas, your report, please.
Two updates. Just piggybacking off of Councilmember Richardson first on, I appreciate you sharing that about the Everbridge. And talking with Dave and Jessica with communications, we do plan on putting out some notifications on when the sirens are activated and also sharing about Everbridge as well. Because I also received plenty of questions on, are we going to sound the alarms or not? And so anyway, it should be good to at least share that information. And then the other thing, we do have a joint session tomorrow at 4 o'clock at City Hall with the Hutch Rec Commission. So we'll all see each other again.
Well, to be fair, the mayor posted a very informative thing about the Everbridge, and I just stole it to make me sound smart before she spoke earlier.
I will pay you back later.
But I did want to mention that the outdoor sirens are not for hearing them inside. That's something that I think people need to realize.
That's right. Other than that's all I have.
Actually, there's going to be a request for an executive session, and no, it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
And if the council decides they don't want to have an executive session, you just vote it down.
Got
So
it.
here's the proposed motion. Motion to recess into executive session pursuant to the consultation with an attorney for the public body or agency which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under exception KSA 75-4319B2 in order to discuss legal responsibilities to other entities. The open meeting to resume in the city council chambers at...
Let's have a 5-minute recess. Can you bake that into
Yeah,
your
we'll-
return time?
How much you think?
30 minutes, assuming the 5-minute recess.
So at 7:40
42.
PM. Is
So
there a
moved.
motion?
I'll second.
Richardson?
Yes.
Garza?
Yes.
Bass?
Yes.
Magers?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
It's better be good, Garza.
Move to extend the executive session by 10 minutes.
Second.
It'd be on the same grounds as the previous one.
Yes.
And so Richardson.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Fast.
Yes.
Meggers.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes. that bachelor life is good, yeah.
It's like you're wrapped in a warm, cuddly blanket.
I've been safe all day long.
That's right.
It is, not just.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I moved.
So moved.
A second.
Third.
It was a chorus. Richardson.
Yes.
Garza.
Yes.
Bass.
Yes.
Megger.
Yes.
Goss. Thank you for coming.